One thing that I really appreciate having this show, having this platform, is the ability to really dive in headfirst, to really dive deep into how Oregon approaches recruiting, how Oregon approaches roster construction. Because I've been following things from a conference-wide level. I've been focusing on things certainly from a national. I've been following national recruiting for a very long time, but not maybe the nuts and bolts of it. Not maybe the inner workings of it within a specific program. And now following Oregon throughout this cycle, I think I've got a pretty good gauge on how exactly that they are approaching things. Because how they are approaching things are pretty different right now than maybe some other teams are approaching some things. Other teams out there are throwing a lot of money around. Other teams out there are getting a lot of commitments right now because of those big-time NIL deals that are being put on the table at this very point in time. It has been reported. It has been clear. Oregon is very steadfast. They are very strong on just how high, just how far they are willing to go. Oregon's approach is the long game, whereas other schools right now might be looking for that instant gratification. They might be throwing a lot of money on the table to be able to load up, whether it is before that July 1st house settlement deadline, whether that's a big reason or whether that's what they feel they have to do to be able to move from 6 wins to 8, 9, or 10 wins down the road. Oregon, I believe, is very confident in their position, and they believe this long approach is going to work. And I believe that this long game approach is certainly going to work. Oregon's not going to get through this entire cycle and getting the guys they want without dropping a bag. Drop the bag at positions of need and priorities that you view as absolute top priorities in this recruiting class. This will eventually tie into what I'm going to say about the transfer portal, but you look at quarterback, for example. They've gotten into some of these recruitments. We know what happened with Jared Curtis. I'm not exactly sure where the NIL really stood in all of that. Dante Moore, Austin Novosad, they know what the future looks like and what their development looks like, and they know what they can do when they go into the transfer portal and get anybody out of the portal right now. Like, they're not going to overspend just to overspend to be able to bring in a high schooler, a quarterback that is unproven at this moment in time. Another position, corner. Now, corner is a very valuable position, of course, on a football field, but in this cycle, in 2026, it maybe wasn't the biggest position of need because of what happened in the 25 cycle. These things are going to go in cycles. Remember that as well. Last year, they got 3 top 75 corners. So they were already loaded. So it was going to be really tough to justify spending the amount of money that Texas A&M was on Brandon Arrington. We know what just happened there with Arrington committing to the Aggies down in College Station. It was going to be really hard to be able to sell Arrington on playing time, considering with what you just brought in at that moment in time. So what the position of need is and how much money that you're willing to spend on that position also kind of goes into what you did the previous year, what you did 2 years ago, and how stacked your room is at that particular position as well. Now we kind of go into the positives. What we talked about at the beginning of the show, the commitment of Jet Washington. Okay, yes, they did get one safety last year in Trey McNutt, but I mentioned before, they got 3 corners. So this was a position of need. And I think it was pretty clear to me that Oregon identified, all right, this is the safety we want. When they locked in on Jet, they said, we're going to get it done. And look what happened. They got the job done. Now, I'm going to speak out of both sides of my mouth a little bit because like safety is one of those positions where it's hard to get like really quality players out of the transfer portal. The top 2 safeties in the country right now, it looks like, are transfers. Dylan Thieneman at Oregon, Caleb Downs over there at Ohio State, but that doesn't happen every time. That's a position where you need to be able to recruit really well to be able to have those great to elite level players at that type of position. You know what another position is? Offensive tackle. Gee, we're talking about Isaiah World and Alex Harkey, 2 extremely highly graded offensive tackles here, Ted. But once again, that's not necessarily a position where it's going to be absolutely fruitful in the transfer portal every single year and every single cycle. Oregon will drop a bag, probably their biggest bag on Emmanuel Ahi-Nacho. At this point, I would be surprised if Nacho is not a Duck. Offensive tackle, an extremely important position. So you kind of go down the list, and Oregon really identifying a group of players. I thought Brandon Arrington might be that player, but it turns out he was not that player. One guy I would certainly keep my eye on, Tyler Atkinson. Dan Lanning is taking the point in that recruitment. That's one where I could see them investing a lot of money right now. So Oregon is investing their money recruiting-wise at the top right now. And then they're certainly trying to trickle down. This was always going to be a smaller class, I think, to begin with. With the players that they pick, they're going to be ultra picky and choosy with the way that they choose to spend their high amounts of money. Top transfers are still important to success here at the University of Oregon. Now, 24/7 site, Duck Territory, came out with a report that said, hey, it sounds like Oregon is pushing a lot of money and investing a lot of resources into the transfer portal and transfer portal recruiting right now. A lot of people took that as, well, especially with what's going on with high school recruiting right now. Oh, they're not putting as much money into the high school side. And that's the connection that people made. And that's fine. People can make that connection, but it's been like, look at the amount of great transfers and how impactful they have been to Oregon getting W's on the field. You look at the quarterbacks, Bo Nix, you look at Dylan Gabriel, you look at Bucky Irving, you look at Tez Johnson, you look at Jordan Burch. I mean, you can go down the list of these impactful transfers. So, and what happens when a transfer comes onto campus in Eugene? They commit. To my knowledge, the only guy definitely in the last couple of years that has been to campus in Eugene but hasn't committed to Oregon was Walter Nolan, defensive tackle, and he went over to Ole Miss. That, I believe, is a big-time priority. It is a big-time resource for this Oregon football program, and that's what roster construction is right now. You've got to be able to look ahead. You got to be able to play the long game. You just can't spend tens of millions of dollars right now in recruiting from the spring to June in the summer, and then hope it all turns out well, and then you look around and say, oh crap, now we don't have as much money with transfer portal recruiting. It's all about balance, and I believe Oregon has a lot of balance right now. So you could call it playing the long game, you could call it balance, you can call it whatever you want. I think that's the game that they're certainly trying to play right now. And Dan Lanning has said this in an interview before. Now, in the current climate of college football, it's never been a better time to finish second place in a recruitment. This cycle, 2026, I'm going to give you a list of guys. That Oregon came in second place, whether they were in a announced commitment or whether it was a flip. Jared Curtis, Tamahini Tapui, Jonas Williams, Cody Green, Brandon Arrington, Jackson Cantwell, Zion Ely. Those are some pretty damn good players. Their second place list is a lot better right now than their first place list. Okay, so when or if some of these guys enter the transfer portal, one of the first calls is going to be to Dan Lanning. One of the first mutual connections is going to be between Oregon and some of these players as well. So that also needs to be taken into consideration. I believe in this staff. They didn't wake up and all of a sudden forget how to acquire talent. They all of a sudden didn't wake up and forget how to construct a roster. I believe they're playing with balance. I believe they're playing with a long game. Will Oregon have their third consecutive top 5 recruiting class? Maybe not. But I think with where the Ducks sit right now and their stack roster dropping down to like 6, 7, and 8, and eventually kind of popping back up to the top 5, these things are going to come in cycles. It's going to come and go, and I'm totally fine with that.